Cersei Lannister is a paranoid chaos gremlin who stumbles from one easily avoidable mistake to the next until she is finally crushed under the weight of her own stupidity. Now, if you're a show-only person, you might be going, no, not my Cersei, she's a great player of the Game of Thrones, and to that I would say no, she's not. Cersei is kind of a unicorn when it comes to the Game of Thrones TV show because she is one of the only female characters who doesn't get dumbed down in their adaptation. She gets smartened up, but it's bad. It's not in a good way. So kind of how this comment is talking about, Cersei gets changed a lot if going from book to screen, and a lot of that has to do with basically how her actions are framed within the story. And it's interesting because within the context of the show, for the most part, her actions are almost always framed in a pretty generous way where, like, she is decisive, she's ruthless, she has a plan, and she's trying to make moves, and sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't. And this characterization goes along with my theory that D&D the showrunners basically reward violence with a more generous portrayal on screen. So they see Cersei and her ruthlessness and her willingness to make these big chaotic moves as like proof of like, oh, she's a good player of the game, when in actuality she really isn't. The Cersei of the books is ruled by two basic concepts, her vanity and her paranoia. Her vanity, of course, stems from her upbringing. She had a very entitled upbringing. She was always like set up for these very big positions, these very big moves. Like her father, Tywin, originally wanted to marry her to Rhaegar Targaryen. She was going to be the queen. And then when that didn't happen, you know, other moves were made. Eventually she was married off to Robert. She was always brought up with the idea that she was going to be special, she was going to be important. But simultaneously, along with that, because of her gender, she was stifled. She was not allowed a lot of autonomy. So we have these two like conflicting things going on in her head. The idea that like she is special, she is smart, she is good, which is why she is getting all these like cool positions and being set up for these positions, but compounded with I lack agency, they won't let me make decisions because of my gender, and that is frustrating. And this frustration eventually evolves into paranoia and becomes one of the dominant motivators for her. Now, as you can probably see where I'm going, the combination of insane pride and paranoia it's not good. It's not good. It doesn't lead to smart, helpful decisions. And that is best illustrated in the fourth book, A Feast for Crows, where we finally get point of view chapters from Cersei herself. Obviously, spoilers about that book from here on. You can skip, it's fine. Real quick though, prior to her own POV chapters, we only see her through other people's point of view, mainly Sansa and Tyrion. And the thing about them is they view her as generally kind of scary. She's very ruthless, she's very willing to, you know, enact violence or scheme or do something to get what she wants. And so I can see like how from another person's point of view, okay, like that's just who she is. Tyrion does think she's kind of dumb and easy to manipulate, which is true, but like, again, conflicting point of views, maybe he was wrong, he wasn't. But finally, when we get her point of view in A Feast for Crows, the first thing you realize is that she is batty. She is gone. Her brain, it is scrambled eggs because she is so paranoid at all hours of the day. She sees enemies, she sees perceived wrongs around every corner. And George does a fabulous job of portraying this in the books because something that I think he does really well is he gives like every different point of view kind of a different flavor depending on the person. Like maybe they have a lot of internal dialogue, maybe they like describe the scenery a bit more, maybe they ruminate on their past. Like they all have like different things that make them kind of unique, and Cersei is her incessant, constant internal monologue. She is constantly talking to herself as scenes are going on. Like she's talking to people and like maybe she's responding every so often out loud, but in her head there is like a train of thought dialogue, and it's all like in italics. She's just going on being like, this person's trying to get me, they're crazy, oh, they think they're smarter than me, they're not smarter than me, I'm a lioness of the rock, how dare they, I am Tywin's daughter, they don't know. Meanwhile, I'm reading going like, oh, okay, oh ma'am, oh, let's take a breather, you don't seem well. And she's not, because she's not well. Her brain, like, she is so fucked up because her pride and her paranoia are in such conflict all the time that she knows no rest. Her brain is a mess at all times, and she's constantly trying to control the situation so that she feels that sense of security that she's never gonna get. So in A Feast for Crows, it's horrible because this is the aftermath of Tywin's death, and this is her moment. This is her moment to shine. She can be in charge now, and because of that, because she's finally in charge after, you know, being set up for all of the amazing things, and now no one's in her way. She can do whatever she wants. But you know, she's never actually been prepared for any of this. So she starts making decisive moves, and they're all stupid. The small council she stacks with sycophants who are all kind of bumbling idiots of their own. She puts Qyburn there. She appoints a master of ships, this guy named Aurain Waters, who's just like a hot fuckboy, and he compliments her a lot. So she's like, oh yeah, he would be great at that. That'd be great. Because again, because of her paranoia, she perceives enemies everywhere. So she doesn't want to include any Tyrells on her council, even though that would be the smart thing to do since they are the Lannisters' closest allies at this point. And she's trying to, you know, keep everyone at an arm's length and only surround herself with people who she feels like are valuing her or supporting her thoughts. But they are idiots if they're doing that, so what happens? Then seemingly the worst decision of all is she allows herself to be manipulated by the High Sparrow after he becomes High Septon into allowing them to reestablish the Faith Militant. And what's really interesting about this is in the show, they portray that scene as Cersei like bringing up the idea of reinstating the Faith Militant, kind of with the eventual goal of like, ooh, if there's like a militarized faith force, they'll lock up Loras and then lock up Marjorie, and that's how I'll win. That's how I'll get her out of the way, because again, the paranoia. Now, while that's kind of a dumb idea, it's not as stupid as what actually happens in the book. So in the books, the High Sparrow becomes appointed the High Septon because basically him and his followers overtake the Sept and like strong arm their way into putting all of them in charge. And then he refuses to bless Tommen as the new king, which is super important because, you know, the Faith of the Seventh is the main religion. So Cersei goes to him and is like, hey, we need you to do this. This is my son up there and you need to do that. So what do we got to do? And the High Septon is just like, ooh, I don't know what to do. You know, it's very hard. People don't feel safe in the streets anymore. If only we had the Faith Militant again. And Cersei's like, oh, you want the Faith? Okay, yeah, that's fine, I guess, whatever. And he's like, oh, really? You'll allow that even though it's been outlawed for hundreds of years? And Cersei is like, yeah, it's fine. I don't care. And then in the internal monologue, it's like, yeah, I know it was outlawed a couple hundred years ago by one of the Targaryen kings. I don't remember why or when. It's fine. It's not fine, Cersei. You're... And then after that, her actual plan in the book to get Marjorie thrown in jail is to basically coerce a bunch of people into fabricating stories about her and her cousins like fucking all these men. And Cersei, some of the people that she is convincing to do this are her like side pieces themselves. So she sends them all to like go lie and say, hey, this happened, so that they'll arrest Marjorie. That happens, but then the Faith Militant tortures these people like to get like real confessions out of them, and then they all are like, no, it was Cersei, I swear. And that's when Cersei gets arrested in the books. So it's not just like, oh, I put the wrong person in a position of power and now it's bit me in the butt. Oh no, it's no. She allowed hundreds of years of precedent stopping this dangerous military force from existing again to be poofed because she got tricked by this old man because she was too impatient and didn't want Tommen to like have to come down to the Sept for his blessing. And then she tries to get Marjorie thrown in jail with a ridiculous scheme that is so convoluted and easily gets figured out. And now at this point, she has created a military force that is empowered to do just this, grab her and throw her in jail instead of Marjorie, or with Marjorie at the same time. And I didn't even get to the fact that she thinks that Tyrion is literally hiding in the walls the entire time. That's a part 2. If you guys want that, please let me know. Okay, goodbye. Cersei Lannister is a Delulu tornado of paranoia whose brain has gone fully mushy bananas. Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. In Part 2, I promised to talk about Cersei's paranoia, specifically the seeds of that paranoia and how they eventually manifest into her thinking that Tyrion is literally hiding in the walls of King's Landing. But before that, we do need to rewind a little bit back to her childhood so that we can set this up. The following will contain spoilers that date back to the Bush administration. You've been warned. In the comments of my previous video, lots of people mentioned Maggie the Frog and the prophecy that Cersei got when she's a child. So let's talk about that and how that feeds into her paranoia. I promise I didn't forget. So in both the show and the books, you learn that Cersei had a prophecy given to her by a woods witch named Maggie the Frog back when Cersei was a child living in Casterly Rock. And that woods witch gave her basically a two-part prophecy, both of which you get in the books, but only half of it appears in the show. So the first part of the prophecy, Cersei asks if she will marry the prince, meaning is she going to marry Rhaegar Targaryen, who is the prince that Tywin has been trying to set her up with. And Maggie the Frog says, no, you will not wed the prince, you will wed the king. And she's like, okay, how many kids will I have? And Maggie the Frog says, I think, you will have 3 and the king will have like 17 or something. She's confused. And then gold will be their crowns, gold will be their shrouds. So golden hair, golden shroud. You know, when you die, you have a shroud put on you. It's very sad. So that's the part that you get in the show, but the book, there is a second half of that prophecy, and that is that Cersei is going to be killed by the Valonqar. The Valonqar is, I think it's a Valyrian word, I might be wrong, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it means little brother. So because Cersei thinks that she's the brightest kid who's ever existed, she immediately goes, oh, that's Tyrion. Tyrion is the one who's going to kill me, and this is the source of her hatred of Tyrion for the rest of her life. Like, yes, obviously, losing her mother during Tyrion's birth is also another source of her anger, but specifically, she is terrified that Tyrion is going to kill her, and so naturally she hates him, she's mean to him, she tortures him, which is a weird thing to do, because, you know, you're kind of setting up someone to not like you, and you've been prophesied to be murdered by a little brother, whatever. But as the rest of us can probably put together in our heads, because we have a couple of brain cells to rub together, Cersei has more than one little brother, because technically Jaime is her little brother as well. He's her twin, but he came out second. So the Valonqar prophecy could, you know, apply to him as much as it applies to Tyrion, but we don't know yet. Guess we'll see. Again, I assume in the books it's not going to be a rocks fall and everyone dies death. I assume the Valonqar is actually going to have something to do with it. Weird, I know. But anyway, so this prophecy that she gets told at a very young age begins to really inform all of her decisions going forward, and becomes the source of her paranoia. Because, again, she has been told a future that she doesn't like, and so she's going to actively try to fight it, while at the same time growing up in a society that does not allow her the agency to kind of like do that to her full capacity. Now, I would probably argue that trying to actively fight against a prophecy is never going to be good. I don't think it ever goes well in this universe, and if anything, it's going to make the bad thing happen in the worst possible way, versus like, oh, I don't know how that'll work, that prophecy will work out, like maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but no, if you're actively trying to fuck with it, it's going to come out bad, I just assume. So smash cut to the present day, Cersei is now in charge in the aftermath of Tywin's death. Tywin is gone, and Cersei is Queen Regent. She, without a hand who can control her, and, you know, as I talked about in the last video, she starts going kind of buck wild. She's making all these decisions, she's making all these moves, partially from a place of like, oh, I finally have the autonomy, I finally have the ability to control things, I can actively fight this prophecy and like try to position myself and position my kids, who are my legacy, in like the best possible way. But, you know, Cersei is not so good up here, so the choices she's making to try to do that are not doing that, and in fact are probably what's ultimately leading to the deaths of her children and then eventually her. But anyway, at the present, you know, she's all gung-ho, but because like she's finally in control, the paranoia is also growing. Because like now that she has control, she's terrified of losing again. She's terrified of making the wrong move that will ultimately lead to her demise, especially now since she is fully in control. And so this leads to all these assumptions that she's making and all these delusions that she's putting on herself. My favorite being, of course, that Tyrion is in the walls, man. He's in the walls! Cersei, what the fuck is wrong with you? My god. So the Tyrion is in the walls delusion kind of starts from a place of logic. So Feast for Crows opens directly in the aftermath of Tyrion killing Tywin in the Tower of the Hand. So they find Tywin's body, they're searching the castle for Tyrion, Cersei and Jaime are awakened, and she is like distraught, she's angry, she's rageful, especially because it's Tyrion who did this. The person that she has never trusted, that she thinks is going to lead to her ultimate death, he has now killed their father, and seemingly left them exposed. And then specifically, the way Tyrion was able to kill their father was by using one of the secret passageways in Maegor's Holdfast, which is like the center of the Red Keep, that like central castle. He's been able to use one of the secret passageways to get into the Tower of the Hand, where he murdered Tywin. So immediately, Cersei is like, okay, everyone, search the castle, search the dungeons, follow the secret passage, we gotta find him, we gotta find Tyrion! And naturally, because Tyrion's on a boat now, they don't find Tyrion. So now Cersei's freaking out. She thinks the Valonqar is on the loose. He's probably after her. He's probably after Tommen, and he's using the secret passageways in the castle to move around. Because obviously he wouldn't flee from King's Landing. He'll stay here. He'll stay here, and he'll just be moving around. He'll just be like sneaking around, looking around corners and stuff. Because this is where Cersei's mind is at the moment. And her fear that Tyrion is still nearby leads her to do crazy shit. So something that doesn't happen in the show, but does happen in the books. Cersei has the High Septon of the Faith killed, because Tyrion was the one who like helped replace the previous High Septon. So the current one is like a Tyrion appointee, basically. So she's like, oh, he's one of Tyrion's guys, so we gotta get rid of him, and then we'll put our own in, okay? We'll put our own in. But the problem with that is that killing the new guy leads to a new election, and that's when all the sparrows come into the city, and they strong-arm that election so that the High Sparrow is put in place, and the people that she thought would be the next High Septons are now being punished and forced to do manual labor in the Sept. And then the pièce de résistance with the whole Tyrion is in the walls thing. Cersei is so scared that Tyrion is still hanging around the Tower of the Hand that she decides to blow it up. Specifically, she is going to burn it to the ground during Tommen's wedding, kind of like fireworks. So after Tommen is married to Marjorie, which, you know, Cersei is furious about, but that had been like brokered before Tywin had died, so it was like happening now. So in the aftermath of the wedding, as part of the celebration, Cersei has the pyromancers basically cover the Tower of the Hand in wildfire, and then they light it ablaze. And all the crowds after Tommen's wedding get to watch. And Cersei is at her most unhinged watching this, because she's watching like the Tower of the Hand go up until it's like burned and like collapsing and stuff, because, you know, the wildfire burns so hot, and she just like in her internal monologue is like, yes, Tyrion's not going to be able to do anything now, because Tyrion's either dead or he's far away, and I burned his secret passageways. Mwahaha, I am so smart. I am a lioness of the rock. I am Tywin Lannister's daughter. Cersei, please calm down. So the moral of the story is that Cersei is so paranoid, so delusional, so scared for her life and the life of her child, that she literally thinks her little dwarf brother is just scurrying around the secret passageways of the castle, and she doesn't feel safe in her room, and she's going to and she feels like she needs to burn down chunks of the castle to become safe from him, because we need to knock down the walls, man. We gotta figure it out, because he's in the walls. I have now made 2 9-minute plus videos on Cersei and her craziness, and I feel like I still haven't talked about everything. If there's anything else from this you want me to talk about, please let me know in the comments. I probably won't get to it immediately, but I'll get to it. Okay, goodbye.